Okay, so good morning, everyone. I am pleased to be here to discuss today this topic that has been evolving rapidly, perhaps I would say, in recent years, navigating the evolution from desktop to cloud IDEs. I have to say I had initially a perfect plan to make this presentation with John Kellermann, with the program manager of Cloud Dev Tool, and I'm the program manager of Eclipse IDE. But unfortunately, John was unable to attend today, so I will do it. It's too bad because he was a native speaker. So, but anyway, I will do my best. And I should probably today rename that title Strategic Evaluation from the Eclipse IDE and Thea community members, and I will explain to you why. Before we dive into the evaluation, I just want to take a moment to clarify expectation for today's talk. Our goal with this session is to better understand where the developer community currently stands when it comes to IDE technology and the decision they are making regarding their choices between cloud-based IDE and desktop-based IDE. So, before starting, I need to use that. In this room, and raise your hand for if you are mostly using a desktop-based IDE. Wow, a huge majority of people. And so now raise your hand if you are mostly using a cloud-based IDE. Okay, just a few hands, 2 or 3 hands, I think. And we have people using both. Oh yeah, a few of them. And perhaps people not using IDE, you don't use that. No, nobody, okay. Not a surprise, okay, interesting. So, let's start by a question. What's that? Do you know? Not sure. So, when I started working with John Kellermann, we quickly realized that it was not so simple to determine what we mean exactly by cloud-based IDE, because actually it's, according to John, my colleague, it's a cloud-based IDE. He was working on this IBM terminal 40 years ago, I think. And he was telling me that, yeah, it's a perfect terminal. You can develop, you can access your workspace remotely, and you can push your modification. It's a real IDE, according to him. So we realized it was not so simple to define exactly, to agree on this definition, and that's basically why we said, okay, perhaps it would be better to seek help for the community. And so here is what we did. So basically we started some questionnaire with a questionnaire, we interviews with between 15 and 20 participants, but we had basically 15 participants answering everything. More than 25 questions, and by the way, I see some of them in the room, so apparently they recovered from our questionnaire, because it was an evil questionnaire with too many questions, by the way, but thank you, it's an opportunity for me to thank you. And so, in terms of profile, it was, for most of them, community members from both Cloud Dev Tool and Eclipse IDE side. And also important to notice that we had mostly very experienced developers and people between 10 and 15 years experience on the average, and deeply involved in this topic since they are working in this community and working for a long time with IDE. So it could introduce some biases in the answer that we got doing this, because perhaps if we ask the question to younger or beginner profiles, the response could be different. So before sharing with you the learnings. I think we need to clarify something about what we mean by cloud-based IDE. And so here we make a distinction between UI or running in the browser and using a cloud backend. I see we have in the room technical people, so probably it's very clear for you, but I think it's good to clarify this because we're asking questions. We realized very quickly that we some confusion and some answers were not really taking into account this difference. So by running in the browser, we mean coding tools, and we operate in the web browser. You can write, manage code online, and even many features work basically locally in the browser, even if some functions may still depend on remote servers, of course, and for processing tasks or running, accessing database or whatever. So when we say IDE runs in the browser, sometimes we still use cloud services, of course. On the other hand, using cloud backend means that while you may access the interface through your web browsers, you may or you may not actually, the main functionalities, workspace and your settings or even uncommitted source code, you can access your development environment from any device. You can continue to work seamlessly no matter where you are. But and to express the source of confusion, some developers reported using desktop-based IDE, but actually leveraging cloud resources for their workspace and project data configuration. And so you need to be clear on that. And so moving forward, I will be using cloud-based IDE with the meaning of running in the browser and using a cloud backend. And this is still how a majority of participants in your questionnaire interpreted these terms. So let's go to the synthesis, first synthesis. So I keep top 5 not in a particular order. Was not a poll. So regarding cloud-based IDE, so probably you won't be surprised by that, but most of the people identify cloud-based IDE most suited and very useful for simpler and quicker setup. Typically for demo, for trainings, quick edits or pull requests, and the quick setup is mentioned by most of them. And so identify it can save a lot of time and effort when in these particular use cases. The second one is, it's very common for cloud-based services in general. It's about having the ability to use multiple devices and to change the device and to find the same configuration and to access it from wherever you are. So the third one is interesting. It was perhaps a little bit more a surprise. It's generational preferences. Some of the people, some of the company I mentioned here, mentioned that it's for them. They think, even if they were not in the respondents, in the list of respondents, that they identified that cloud-based IDE as seen as more modern or perhaps in line with the expectation of younger generation and in the trends of developer experience. And so we even have some companies telling us that they are taking into account this criteria to attract and to retain young people. The last two are a little bit more specific use case. It's about data legal constraint. We have a use case when typically one developer when need to make sure the data is hosted on a specific country, and for regulatory constraints or legal constraints, whatever. They use cloud-based IDE to do this and still access it remotely. And the last one is about mostly large distributed development teams, and especially the one doing a cloud for design system. So now let's go to the top 5 on desktop-based IDE side. And this is interesting because we also had many arguments for using and for that part. So the first one, again, not in particular order, but this one is again very common. It's having the ability to use the full power, the full local power of your machine. Most of us, we have very powerful local machines. And so this is, whether it's CPU, memory, storage, it's sometimes crucial for people, some of the people in this room, are very, very large projects with thousands of plugins, and they mentioned that for them it's very important to have this ability to use local power. The second one is closely related to the first one. It's more about economical choice. People telling us, okay, why should I pay for compute resources since I have so much power locally? So I make this choice because this is just a way for me to eliminate this extra cost. The third one is interesting. Many people are mentioning this. It's about real-time debugging and profiling. So I would be curious to have your feedback after the presentation, if it's true or not. And it's just a listing and the feedback that we got. But many people mentioned that running directly on the operating system can perhaps offer more robust and responsive tools for troubleshooting, for debugging, for memory profiling, and this kind of use case. And the fourth one is, again, we are going in perhaps more specific use case depending on the company you are working for, but in highly regulated environment, of course, you have machines sometimes intentionally isolated from external networks, and making cloud solution. You can still make local cloud deployment, of course, but you lose some of the benefits from the cloud, open cloud or networking features like sharing and moving your environment from one device to the other. And the last one is, so something, perhaps a little bit less obvious. We have many companies here that are using local hardware, embedded systems, and Bluetooth device or whatever hardware, and whether it is in their testing environment or to implement, just to develop their product. And so some of the people here identify a gap in features in handling such tasks for cloud-based IDE. So it's another good reason for them to use desktop-based. Here, me and John, we decided to put a little bit aside the question of speed, because actually most of the people were telling us something about the speed. I prefer cloud. Sometimes people telling us I prefer cloud because of the speed, and some of them telling I prefer desktop-based because of the speed. So that's interesting. We decided to put it aside because perhaps it's probably highly dependent on network responsiveness, and so probably with people having a very strong network and quick response time can find cloud-based IDE solution even faster. But I am curious, again, I'm curious to see if you agree in this room. We have many people in the room today, and you did not all participate to the questionnaire, so feel free to disagree. But that's why we decided to put this particular question aside of the other reason to choose, to make one choice or the other. Well, now we had another question. We had many questions in the questionnaire. And one of the questions was, okay, what is the current level of adoption in your organization regarding cloud-based IDEs? And so we mostly had responses like, okay, it's in progress, considering, trying to push forward. So, and following the question I asked at the beginning of the presentation, as you have seen, most of you are still using, in a large majority, using desktop-based IDs, so it's interesting. So there is, so good to mention, there is an interesting split between how people see the future of this situation. Some people really see cloud-based IDE as the future and say, okay, we will move everything online. And some other don't really think it will be, don't have the same vision. They think that it's more a shift towards local to remote and using local power, but unusing obviously some of the cloud capabilities or remote capabilities for testing, deployment, or for some of our use cases. The next one is, okay, what is missing? So that was one of the questions, interesting. What is potentially missing for you to choose and to adopt cloud-based IDE? So yeah, the first one is very generic, but okay, more features. But it's still okay. That still means something. That probably some people believe that cloud-based IDE don't offer the full range of features that developers are used in desktop environments. So probably since I'm looking for some of the Theia developer in the room, I don't know if you agree, if you think that you have as many features as desktop-based IDE, but yeah, was very common feedback that we got. Another one very common feedback was about key binding. So yeah, developers like to use shortcuts and so on, and a lot of frustration and pain points in the feedback that we got about, okay, having different behavior and not the same capabilities in terms of shortcuts and key binding in the browser compared to desktop IDs. Usability. So the main concept is not so much about performance. Again, we decided to put performance a little bit aside, but usability. So it looks like people still have the feeling that using a cloud-based IDE brings to you less usability and responsiveness if you compare than with a situation where you use a system resources. And so again, we also had a lot of feedback on profiling tools. Yeah, many people mentioning that lack of, or maybe not the lack, but having not so good JavaScript tools in particular for doing memory profiling and things like that. And the last one is also a very common remark related each time we speak about cloud features and so it's about improving trust. So again, yes, it's building trust in cloud-based IDE is crucial, and some developers are still hesitant about moving a lot of their data in the cloud, or either due to security constraints or fear of losing control on something. Well, so what about collaboration features? So it is a perfect transition with the presentation from Mark on the new project from just before my presentation. So yeah, people are a little bit kidding about this topic as they say, okay, isn't screen sharing enough? Isn't Git enough? So there are still most of the participants use other tools or chat tools, Slack, Mattermost, Matrix, or things like that. But the key question arises here is, do we really need more collaboration features in your IDE, integrated in the IDE, or are the current tools sufficient? So it seems that for many developers of our communities, it's, yeah, you see what they are saying. It seems that current IDE is basically meeting their needs and making them hesitant to adopt more integrated collaboration solutions. But perhaps if the new project is bringing killer features, it will change the answer. We could do it again later on. So now, yeah. Last question was about what is your degree of liberty in the choice of your IDE in your company? So again, I have a question here. So who here within the room has the freedom to choose their IDE? Wow, it's at least 60% of the room. Yeah. And in the people who answered here, how many of you have the freedom to install extension, plugin, and do you have the full freedom? Basically the same list. Okay, okay. So yeah, basically you have, perhaps not a surprise because you are basically the same people, not exactly the same, but yeah, this is basically the feedback that we got. Freedom is mostly at the team level or at the developer level is the rule most of the time, except in some very specific situation. If the work involves open source, the IDE on toolchain must be compatible with open source repository and workflows. So this is a point of attention. And one idea that stands out as the ideal target, that was interesting additional feedback on this question, is that some of the companies are now targeting as being IDE agnostic for their development environment. A little bit like, compare this to the bring your own device trend. So the hope is that developer can use whatever IDE they want or they prefer, and whether they are desktop-based or cloud-based or maybe a combination of both, depending on the use case. So well, just a quick. We are in Eclipse. In EclipseCon today, so just a quick remark that at the Eclipse Foundation, as you already know, we have Eclipse IDE. Probably some of you were attending the presentation from yesterday, and you see you have some technical or innovation SWT layer initiative 31 ongoing. And on Theia side, you had so many presentations. The community is really active and new features coming. I'm also curious about you. I know that some of the people in the room would like to perhaps to have more discussion between these two, because we have two places actually. And in the Eclipse, we have two industry collaboration. You have the Eclipse IDE working group, and you have the Cloud Dev Tool working group. And so, while they are distinct initiatives and with not the same projects, it's important to recognize that basically we have most of the time the same users and the same companies at the core behind these groups. So during the QA session, I would like to leave it as an open question. If you are considering the creation of, and some of the people already started on this in this room, what we call in some kind of cross-working group initiative. We have what we call in the Eclipse Foundation an interest group. It's to explore collectively, I would say, or collaboratively, for instance, how you leverage, or you manage perhaps modernization and transition between taking into account your specific requirement in your companies. So I'm reaching the conclusion now. Key learnings. So as we have explored the differences between cloud and desktop-based IDE, and we realize with John that perhaps the real shift we are seeing isn't just about the environment they run, in which they run. It's fundamentally more about the implementation technology that powers these tools, and the component model they rely on. So it was mentioned that one of the major advantages of VS Code, Theia, or Eclipse, it's a massive number of plugins and extensive component model. Was also mentioned sometimes as a pain point, or at least as a source of complexity. But managing large number of extensions, and particularly the interdependencies, it's a tricky topic and bring a lot of discussion. But was one of the key learning. It's okay. was about this. And regarding the implementation, of course, it's related to the ability to run in the browser. And as you know, as part of the innovation, including on Eclipse IDE side, having the ability to be browser compatible or running in the browser is one of the requirements. So ultimately, this is not so much about where your IDE runs, it's about how it adapts and evolves to meet the changing needs of developer organization. And so, you may ask the question, so at the end, what do we do? I won't. If I try to summarize the presentation, okay, we clearly identify some use case on cloud side, simpler, quicker setup, and some specific use case on both sides. I think we have seen that actually, at least with the respondent of our questionnaire, there's still a lot of room for desktop-based IDEs, and so, if I try to express my conclusion here, ultimately the choice between cloud-based and desktop-based IDE depends on the complexity on the project, depends on specific needs, such as security or hardware interaction, and basically each one has its own strengths. And so we are at the end, we are far from a simplistic view that one approach would be inherently the future of the other. So instead, we can imagine that both paradigms will likely will continue to evolve in parallel and offering complementary solutions depending on the context. And I think I have plenty of time. Now it was my last slide.
Thank you for the presentation. Regarding the evolution of Eclipse Desktop IDE, I'm wondering, are you considering local to remote a feature for that to become competitive on the market?
I'm seeking help for the for them. I don't think we don't. Some people already use actually part of it. It's you can still host some of your settings and parameters on the cloud and get the benefits from it. But I don't see it today. If you look at but this is a really new initiative, just prototyping today, and I don't think this is the top priority right now. I think the priority is mostly about improving UX, UI, and supporting a browser.
Sure, yeah, maybe Jonas?
Yeah. Do you actually mean to run the desktop IDE in the browser? Because
connecting.
There have been approaches to try that. It's actually technically possible. There are frameworks where you can actually kind of stream desktop applications to the browser. The issue with that, whatever solution you come up with, it will not feel like a native browser application. And that means, for example, if you press Control+, it doesn't zoom in and like all this stuff. So I think it can be a bridge, but it's technically available. You can do that, but I've never seen it in practical use, to be honest. So that's just from what I've seen.
Okay, we can maybe take it offline then.
No.
Okay, back in the days when Che was new, I had a chance to do an experiment with a small group of programmers. It was a group of six and a half. So to say, one was just working 15 hours per week, so more or less 6.5. And then Yeah, it all worked, but the people felt not comfortable. So it's more or less not a technical problem, it's a cultural problem with either have the control or have the notion of control, having the laptop in front, maybe also a laptop I own myself. And the other thing was just have a thin client. In our case, it was a smartphone connected to a monitor, keyboard, mouse, and so on. And yes, practically it worked perfectly for the team, but the people felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It was.
It's a matter of trust
Yeah.
or control or
Yeah, it was.
cultural or trust. I know.
Yeah. So that was also one of the first slides with the economic, is if you have a server, and believe me, a server with, today's server with a terabyte of RAM and 100 cores is more powerful than your laptop. So yeah, it's not a matter of speed, it's more or less a matter of trust, it's a matter of culture.
Yeah.
Yes, a short question. You know, on GitHub there is a button you can click to open the repository directly in an IDE. So today the choices are Visual Editor and IntelliJ. Why Eclipse is not in the list, and is a negotiation to get this directly? It's not a prepared question, but I know we can. It's not necessarily
I think
only for you, but
it's
for the
not
community.
only on CodeSpace and also on Gitpod, and in some tools you have a list of desktop-based IDE to choose if you want to quickly initiate and local to remote use case, and you don't have Eclipse IDE. And this probably I'm looking at you because you are a community mentor. Then I will return the question, and when do you do it?
Yeah. So we should work on that.
Yeah, I hope we will have, especially if it's a quick win. So, and it looks like it could be a quick win and something that we should have. Because most of the, and as you said, it's not only VS Code and Theia. You have basically all the IDE on Earth except Eclipse IDE.
That was just a remark.
Yeah, it's a good remark. Last question.
Yeah, maybe just another bullet point for the list of what I feel is missing in why I choose which IDE, and sometimes why I also don't use an IDE while working, is kind of a sense of control. For example, when I'm working with IntelliJ and it tells me something like, you want to do a smart checkout? And I'm like, of course I want to do a smart checkout, but I don't know what 5 to 10 different things you're doing behind the scenes. So I go outside of the IDE and I do it myself, so I know what I'm doing, and I'm not sure of course it's possible to do that with Cloud IDEs, as you phrased it, but for me that would also be a big part as to which IDE I'm choosing.
Yeah, it's related. Yeah, it's another way to ensure your trust in the tool. It is doing some automatic magic things. Behind
not really a question.
Behind the scene.
I'm sorry for that, but
that's
just to add.
Good to know. Yeah.
In our company, we make a discussion because we produce tools for customers, free tool chain, and we nowadays the decision that the future would be based on Theia, just because you allow the double deployment, desktop or cloud. But it's also clear that internally we just beginning the process. First introduce some idea because maybe we want to oblige the people to use some idea. We discover we have a developer that use Notepad and the console and compiling. And first, the second is obvious we see that for the enterprise is much better the cloud. For the control they have, they can save money on the laptop, because for the software developer we have a special laptop that are more expensive. And the only problem that we see is probably the IT, because you charge a lot on the IT, in the sense that when is, for our web application, when is down the server or maintenance or is something bad, you stop the working of so many people. And one advantage of a Git is exactly to move to the laptop, because you can, if you have a Git and local laptop with all the installation, you can continue to work. You even commit, and then later you can push upstream. But I see at least in big enterprise, definitely the cloud is much better, also for security. Because you don't have all the applications stored in your local laptop that can be always, you don't know what's happened with stealing. So this is our view that the future for a big company. Obviously, as our participant already highlighted, this as a developer it doesn't like because I don't have control.
Yeah, I think I did mention about security and cloud being seen as an additional security and as a big, so it's good to say. Okay, another question.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. To me, it's still quite unclear how a Cloud IDE compares to running a desktop IDE on some remote computer. And accessing it via, say, remote desktop or something like that. What is the key feature Cloud IDE provides?
Yeah, I would try to answer. I didn't prepare the answer, but I think probably the main difference, when people say they are hosting some configuration, workspace, or even some source code remotely, probably they don't have the ability, if they change the device, if they go on another computer, they are roaming to another place, they will have to configure something again. They will be able to get back some resources, some configuration file or whatever. And I think in a real cloud-based IDE, it's my, I may be wrong, but my interpretation is that on a real cloud-based IDE, you really don't care about from where you connect. You are using a browser, you connect, and everything is there exactly in the same state, and you don't have any additional configuration to make it work again. So it's...
Yeah, this exactly is what I experienced running the desktop IDE on a remote computer.
You are successfully doing it, yeah. So
of course, yes, sure.
So
I do not rely on a specific client device for reconnecting to the still running desktop IDE.
You have strictly nothing locally stored in your desktop configuration.
No. No, my local desktop is, or the client I use to.
At least you can be, we can take the question, and I suppose we could say, okay, if you have OS specific resources or libraries or hardware or things like that, you can't use them using a pure, you can. You could use them using a cloud-based IDE, but it's a little bit more complex, it's much more complex.
Agreed, connecting specific hardware to your laptop or development computer, of course, is a different point. But doesn't this require a local IDE anyway? On the other hand, I could
I didn't say
forward-
it's required. Yeah, I didn't say it's mandatory.
On the other hand, I could forward the USB connection over TCP VPN to my remote server.
Yeah, but is it a feature of UIDE, or did you develop something yourself to implement that feature?
There exists
There already
implementations of the, I did not use it recently, but I have used it once. And yeah, I'm not sure about the state of this, and I don't remember the name of this library or this package. I think it was USB over TCP or something like that.
Cloud solution is scaling. If you have
Yeah.
your IDE in a VM, it scales one-to-one.
I was awaiting some help from. Yeah, did you hear it?
No, I did not understand it.
It was not recorded. So you said the main difference between, yeah, it's scaling, yeah, basically.
Scaling? Sure could be a difference, but I just don't.
Yeah. Then I'm trying to speak loud.
Take the mic.
Okay, so the difference between a VM-based IDE and a cloud-based IDE is the scaling. So your VM-based IDE is a one-to-one match. And if you want 5 other developers, you need 5 other VMs. In the cloud thing, you just need to spawn other cloud, I mean, in the back there are also VMs, but the scaling is much more easier than spawning those VMs. And you have the collaboration because multiple people can connect to those cloud IDEs. Yes, to the same IDE. And these are the main differences between your VM-based solution and a cloud-based solution. I mean, probably Jonas can add several more points, but from a perspective, from top perspective, these are those 2 main differences from a VM to a cloud.
Okay. I think. Thank you. Okay. I think